Serious, people who have found human remains, murder scenes, or other suspicious scenes. What happened? I was 11 years playing in the woods with my friends. Autumn day, bright, cool. There was 4 of us, 3 boys and a girl. We were walking a pretty well-known path between 2 neighborhoods when the girl said, "Someone left their doll out here." We walked over to the doll, which was dressed in jean coveralls, sneakers and a kid's jacket. She was on her side, kinda curled up, but her face was towards the ground so we could only just see one eye, one cheek, one ear. She had brown shoulder-length hair that was a bit curly like a lot of little kids' hair is. About 3 or 4 years old. The girl in our group kneeled down once and shook her shoulder and said, "Hey kid." Nothing. After that we all kinda looked around at one another and one of us, don't remember who, said we should call 911. There was a payphone on the street at the end of the path in the direction we had been heading, so we all just walked away from the kid. We kept looking back until she was out of sight. I made the call when we got to the phone. I had to explain it to the person on the line 3 or 4 times before they kinda believed me. Told me they were sending out an officer. He pulled up about 5 minutes later, took one look at all our faces, then said, "Where is she?" We pointed down the path, and one of the guys said, "You can't miss her." The cop told us to stay where we were and he walked on down the path. 10 minutes later another squad car came screaming down the road with lights and sirens. After that the place was an absolute circus. All 4 of us kids just kinda walked away. Saw it on the news that night that it was a little girl who'd gone missing the day before from a couple of miles away. It was said she died of exposure. I think about it every now and then and get sad, like now. My buddy and I were out for a trail run in the local state park when we came across a guy who hung himself. Called the cops, we were interviewed, and sent on our way. The guy's car was nearby, filled with newspapers. He was a paper delivery guy. Back in the pre-cell phone days, I found a body on my way to work. My starting time was 5 a.m. and I would occasionally bike to work, weather permitting. It was to be a warm day, so off I go on my bike. No traffic meant I could cruise along pretty good. I was just starting to enter an underpass when I spotted a person laying on the road. I'm thinking a drunk fell off the sidewalk and passed out. As I slowed down I saw a long trail of blood. So off the bike I go to see if they were okay. Half-open eyes and brain matter said otherwise. No phone and no traffic, what to do? First car to come along was a taxi. Great, he has a radio and will call the cops. Wrong. He sees me jumping up and down, waving my arms near a downed person. Hits the brakes, pulls a fast U-turn and got the fuck out of there. A couple of minutes later a van comes from the other way. He does the same thing. Then a car pulls up, an older dude asks what's up. I tell that's a dead person and someone needs to call the cops. He says he's got to get to work and will probably phone from there and left. About 10 minutes later, I was able to flag down a police car about a block away. An ambulance shows up at the same time. I ask them, the cops and EMTs, if anyone called them. Nope. So I get interviewed, tell my story and am sent on my way. Later in the week, an officer calls me to let me know what was happening. Apparently it was a suicide. She, 23 years old, was having a rough spell and was living on the streets. Her family said she was harming herself since she was a child and had attempted to kill herself before. Jumped off the overpass onto the pavement below. Pretty sad situation all around. And as it turned out, I worked with her cousin about a year later. I've never talked about this before and I'm glad I did, even if it was on Reddit. My parents would send me to El Salvador for 3 months every 2 years till I was 16. I saw a total of 8 dead bodies. Some hanging from freeways, some just dead in the streets because of gangs. I was a project manager on an irrigation project to line earthen ditches with concrete in NV. It was around 2016 that we were in a sort of remote area of the state. Anyways, the construction crew I hired to excavate a portion of the ditch came across an entire skeleton. The skeletal remains were on one of the side banks of the ditch. I mean, the entire skull and ribs were visible to everyone. I had to halt all activities and notify local PD, and the forensics crew from Reno came and retrieved the remains and performed a sweep of the area. for about a week before we could resume our project. To be honest, it was a little creepy and unnerving to see that in person. To my knowledge, it was a cold case from the 1960s. Reno mobsters from the casinos used to take people out to Indian reservations and get rid of people because lack of law enforcement on reservations in those years. Found a dead guy on my way to work. NH, middle of a cold winter, maybe early/mid-January in Manchester. There's a lot of old mill buildings that are used as offices, stores, pubs, etc. I was walking to work, having parked a bit far from the entrance, and I saw what I thought from a distance was 2 trash bags. As I got closer, I realized it was a person, didn't think much about it, moved on. About halfway to work, I realized there was no steam from breathing. I got concerned, walked back, and started loudly speaking at the person, who was non-responsive. I went into work and called 911 because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't own a cell phone at the time. This was early 2KS. Dispatcher said some people were on the way. I went down to the closest spot and waved in a cop, then an ambulance. Said I was the person who called, lead them to the guy, asked if I could go. They determined he was dead and I went to work. I'm guessing he froze to death, not sure how he got there. He might have been homeless. I didn't get a great look at him outside of telling you adult male with dark hair. Told the cop where I worked if they needed me and went to work. When I was 11, my dad and I stayed the night over at his dad, my grandpa's house, one night. My grandpa had just gotten out of the hospital for something relatively minor, so that's probably why we were there. Anyway, I woke up around 4 a.m. to go use the bathroom and I noticed that there was a body in the tub. I woke my dad up and told him several times until he understood what I was saying, and then he ran to the bathroom and bent over the tub. I listened as my dad made some guttural animalistic moaning sounds that were the most terrifying thing I've ever heard in my entire life. I understood that my grandpa was dead, he shot himself, but I hadn't learned about suicide yet. I thought that there was a murderer in the house and that he was going to kill us next. It's been over 20 years, but I can still tell you the episode of Fairly Odd Parents I watched before going to bed and the nightmare I had immediately before waking up that night. Edit, the episode was the one where they go to the skate park. Hex Games. Edit 2, why didn't the gunshot wake you up? Because, as it was explained when I asked that question, we can usually sleep through a single loud noise. It's repetitive sounds that drag us awake like an alarm or a baby crying. Also, I probably did wake up from the sound, and the urge to pee is what kept me from drifting right back off. The police seem to think that he shot himself right before I found him. My dad found a human skull in a gravel pit. Called the cops, they came and got it, never heard anything else. I was a dumb kid at the time. So when he told me about it, I assumed we were going to solve the mystery. Turns out reality is way more boring. When I was 12, I was cycling next to the river in my little village when a fisherman found a suitcase. Being a nosy kid, I went to have a look as he opened it. It's hard to describe the gunk I saw inside. You certainly wouldn't have known it was a person, but bones were visible. The police came and did an investigation, later found out it was the body of a 70-year-old man from a neighboring county who had disappeared a month before. He had been murdered by his son, chopped up and placed into several suitcases. Only the one was found and it was nearly 50 miles away from where they had been dumped. Can't say it affected me at all, probably would now. I was a chef for a while and lots of people come and go. One place I worked had a basement. There was an office, storage, walk-in fridges and freezers, time clock, bathroom. It was cool in the summer. Good place to take a quick break. During a dinner rush, one of my guys ran down to use the bathroom. We were busy, so you don't exactly go unnoticed when you're not there. 5 minutes go by. Then 10. Where the fuck is he? The first thought that comes to mind. Pooping. You don't poop during dinner. Rule 1. Second thought, he left. That's common during rushes. Everyone has their breaking point. We've had people just walk out. Not this guy though. So I ran down when there was a little lull, when the dining room is full and all the orders come in at the same time and people don't leave the tables. You can have a line of 20 people waiting for tables, and just the way it flows, you're not cooking anything. Everybody's fed until a table opens up and the new people order. I go check. Door to the bathroom is locked. Not responding to knocks. Banging away. Fuck. I know what it is before we even get it open. He OD'd. That was a terrible night. I thought he was getting clean. He had a baby at home. Drugs suck. I used to manage a hotel. I once walked into a room that was supposed to have checked out and found a man who had hung himself presumably the night before. I obviously called the police, made sure the cleaning staff did not go in that room, and gave a statement once the police got there. Hotels are so busy and this all took so long that I didn't have time to react or dwell on it until the end of my shift. I parked my car and started to get out and just puked in the parking lot and began sobbing. It was bizarre. I asked for the next day off and my boss, being the asshole she was, refused, saying it wouldn't be fair to set the precedent. Still something that stays with me to this day. Not suspicious, but I felt like the facility got away with negligent homicide. I worked with a new patient. I do physical therapy. She had a new hip replacement. She was young, less than 60. She complained of significant pain in her thigh and was unable to do much physical therapy that day. I had asked her questions about the pain, and given the amount of time that had passed from her surgery, she was still at risk for blood clots in her legs. I had asked her if she talked to the nurse or doctor about the pain, and she said she had. I noted her pain and spoke with nursing, saying that it is possible that she had a clot, and they brushed it off as her not wanting to do therapy and was a difficult patient. I came in the next morning, early, before patients were awake, and one of the staff stopped me and told me that she had passed overnight. She was still in the room. I was not supposed to, but I went in and held her hand and told her I was sorry that I didn't push more to have her checked out. Since then I have been vocal about exactly what patients should be demanding if they have complaints that are unanswered, and make sure I document my conversations with staff clearly if a wrongful death suit would be filed. Edit. Thank you all for the support. It was pretty traumatic and weighs on my mind, especially after the loss of my dad and grandfather to medical mistakes. All I can say is be an advocate for yourself and for your loved ones. I know a lot of us are polite and don't want to be that person, but the simple fact is people know their bodies. If they are insisting something isn't right, they probably know better than you. Difficult patients, drug seekers, or just people with low thresholds for pain/discomfort shouldn't just be written off or ignored. I know this is a hard thing to do, but if possible, be present when your loved ones are in the hospital or skilled nursing. You will be able to catch things that would slip through the cracks otherwise. I've got two for found bodies/parts. The first is straightforward, not suspicious. I was working concrete, pouring a slab for a building that would be neighboring a big hay field. Spoke to the farmer a couple times. He told me he likes to take a break in the shade next to the pond when he's out cutting hay. A few days go by, we're nearing the end of our project, he starts cutting hay. We waved at him as we left the job site for the day. The next day we showed up and his tractor was on its side. Me and another guy ran over it and the old man was dead underneath the tractor. Looked like he bled to death. The second time was the suspicious time. I went fishing and caught a shoe with a foot still in it. I called the police. They came out, took my statement, cut the line and took the foot along with one of my favorite lures.